Welcome everyone to this afternoon's meeting. Before we begin, I'd like to ask everybody to take a moment and bow your head in silent reflection. Thank you. Mr. Minges.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Our next agenda meeting is scheduled on Wednesday, July 11th, Thursday, July 11th, 2019 at 2 o'clock.
Thursday the 11th at 2 p.m. That works for everyone, right? Thursday the 11th. Okay. Thank you.
I would note at the outset that there have been comments filed by a number of the parties over the last week, 10 days, even comments filed today, raising issues with regard to these dockets that were established pursuant to Act 62, also known as the South Carolina Energy Freedom Act, that was House Bill 3659. There is a lot of interest, as there should be, and I would move that at this juncture, because we have so many comments and thoughts floating around, that the parties and any interested persons that may wish to file comments on the scheduling and how these dockets are handled to file those comments by July 5th, 2019, and in particular regarding Johnson Development Associates and the South Carolina Solar Business Alliance's petition to set a consolidated schedule or other scheduling issues. And then that way there can hopefully be some coordinated and reasoning on some of these comments that are going around. And that would be my motion, to file by July 5th. Thank you.
Thank you. You've heard Commissioner Belser's motion. Are there questions or comments? So this is just basically to get all the comments that we can on the what we've done so far and what we're looking at before we move forward with any sort of
yes, sir.
Sort of hearing.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Johnson Development Associates and the South Carolina Solar Business Alliance filed comments on scheduling. I think before that, I think Duke, both DEC and DEP had filed something, and also Dominion. And today was a letter, I believe, from Office of Regulatory staff. Things have been kind of flying around. When somebody files a response. I'd just like to see where we are, consolidated. The parties can just say this is our position, so that it kind of narrows the focus rather than we got to reply to this part and a response to that part, and let's just have something where we can go through logically and see what they're, and we can take that in consideration. I know we're not going to satisfy everybody, but I'd like to at least have a good idea of what we're doing and have a good idea where the parties are, so we can see where we want to go with that. That's what I'm asking for. So
thank you.
If anybody has anything else to say, file it by July 5th. And then we're not doing this back and forth after that.
I understand. Right. Any other questions or comments? Not all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. And the motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, on our utilities agenda, item number 1, docket number 2019-3E, we have a petition to intervene.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Irvin.
I move that we grant the petition to intervene on behalf of the South Carolina Coastal Conservation League and the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy.
Thank you. You've heard Commissioner Irvin's motion. Are there questions or comments? Not all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Items number 2 through 14 are petitions to intervene by the Solar Business Alliance in the following dockets respectively. That's docket numbers 2019-3E, 2019-197E, 2019-196E, 2019-195E, 2019-212E, 2019-207E, 2019-210E, 2019-211E, 2019-224E, 2019-225E, 2019-208E, and 2019-209E, as well as 2019-226E.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Hamilton.
Mr. Chairman, I would move we grant the petitions to intervene in the utility items 2 through 14 as placed into the record by Mr. Menges. So
Thank you.
move, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. You've heard Commissioner Hamilton's motion. Are there questions or comments? Not all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The motion carries. Thank you.
Item number 15, docket number 2019-226E, a renewable power purchase agreement has been filed.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Williams.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept filing of the renewable power purchase agreement between Eastover Solar LLC and Dominion Energy South Carolina Incorporated. So move, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. You've heard Commissioner Williams' motion. Are there questions or comments? Not all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The motion carries. Thank you.
Item number 16, docket number 2019-89E, Duke Energy Carolinas is requesting approval for amended application for Rider 11, Demand Side Management and Energy Efficiency for 2020.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Irvin.
on June the 11th, 2019, Duke Carolinas filed an amended application seeking approval of Rider 11 to its demand-side management and energy efficiency programs for calendar year 2020. In conjunction, Duke also requests that it be allowed to recover the cost of its interruptible service and standby generator programs, also known as existing DSM programs, as a component of this Rider 11. On June 14, 2019, the Office of Regulatory Staff filed a review report stating the company is seeking recovery of $82,903,103 with $37,077,223, which represents 45% of the total attributed to residential customers, and $45,825,880, which represents 55%, attributed to non-residential customers to cover the revenue requirements of Rider 11. Based on its review, ORS recommends a reduction of $2,536 to the company's total system program costs to account for the removal of certain expenses that were either not allowable for rate-making purposes or were incorrectly categorized. ORS finds that the programs continue to perform well, realize cumulative energy savings have exceeded the anticipated energy savings by 57%, and although the number of non-residential opt-outs has increased, the company has responded by creating an additional opt-in window and by adding programs that target non-residential customers. ORS also finds that the updated DSM and EE rate riders were developed in accordance with the terms and conditions set forth by this commission and are based upon reasonable estimates of participation in the company's DSM and EE programs. This rider would be effective from January 1, 2020 through December 31, 2020. Accepting the ORS adjustment, the average residential customer using 1,000 kilowatt per month would experience a decrease of approximately $1.60 per month. Based on this information presented in the Duke's amended application, as well as the ORS report, I move that we approve Rider 11 to its demand-side management and energy efficiency programs for the calendar year 2020, along with the recovery of costs associated with the existing interruptible service and standby generator programs. I would recommend that we strongly encourage the company to consider the parties' comments in this docket as the company evaluates and implements these programs. So moved.
Thank you. You've heard Commissioner Irvin's motion. Are there questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Belzer.
thank you. I agree with Commissioner Irvin's motion, and we'll be voting for it. I particularly agree with the part asked where we are recommending that the company consider other parties' comments. In this docket, Walmart filed a letter, as well as SACE, or Southern Alliance for Clean Energy, and South Carolina Coastal Conservation League filed some detailed comments. Interestingly enough, Walmart is requesting that that Duke Energy Carolinas engage with Walmart to streamline the opt-out procedures, to align them more with the Duke Energy Progress procedures. Walmart asserts that the DEP procedures are more streamlined than the DEC procedures. But then again, SACE and CCL, they expressed on one issue concern that there are a lot of non-residential opt-out in the state. I do find that some of the SACE's comments, they were laudatory to some degree of what DEC has done, and those are appreciated. But they do have some suggestions where they and they indicate that they will continue to support DEC's DSM and EE programs, and they acknowledge that these programs are achieving substantial savings and benefits. But in addition to concern over the high number of non-residential opt-outs, SACE and CCL do suggest increasing offerings for low-income customers, which, given our population in South Carolina, would be a welcome addition. And they indicate their willingness to continue to work with DEC and the collaborative that was established in another docket, and where many of these suggestions have been fleshed out. And one of the other things that I found interesting in the SACE and CCL comments is the suggestion that development of some sort of annual standardized reporting protocols to try to bring transparency to the DSM EE efforts and the recovery rider. And I certainly join and encourage the company to work within the collaborative and with these other parties to see if they can reach some common ground on some of these issues. But I think that the parties did raise some good issues, and SACE and CCL were, as I will say, they were very complimentary of DEC for working within the collaborative and addressing these issues. And it's nice to hear that they are working together and going forward with this. But I think if they can engage in the collaborative, that with all parties working together with these suggestions, it will certainly help strengthen the offerings and what's being done on the DSM and EE front. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The motion carries. Thank you.
Item number 17, docket number 2018-281E. This matter concerns Duke Energy Carolinas' application requesting approval for the transfer and sale of hydroelectric generation facilities, acceptance for filing of a power purchase agreement, and an accounting order to establish a regulatory asset.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Whitfield.
Mr. Chairman, in this docket, Duke Energy Carolinas seeks approval of transfer and sale of 5 hydroelectric generating facilities to Northbrook Carolina Hydro 2 LLC and Northbrook Tuxedo LLC. Company also seeks to establish a regulatory asset to defer estimated loss resulting for the transaction in the amount of $9.5 million on a South Carolina retail basis. Duke Energy Carolinas represents that this transfer and sale is more economical than continued ownership of the facilities and will result in a net savings for customers over time. Mr. Chairman, I would note that we have seen this before, and two examples that come to mind immediately are the Buzzard's Roost facility Duke owned at Lake Greenwood, now belongs to Santee Cooper, and here in Columbia, I believe Lockhart is now operating the hydro facilities here. So we have seen this before. Mr. Chairman, I would also note that the Office of Regulatory Staff has no objection to the company's application for approval of the transfer and sale of these facilities or for acceptance for filing of a purchase power agreement and an accounting order to establish a regulatory asset, provided that the issuance of an accounting order in this matter will not preclude the ORS, the Commission, or any other party from addressing the reasonableness of these costs, any return sought, and including any carrying costs in a subsequent general rate case or any other proceeding. Accordingly, Mr. Chairman, I move that the Commission approve the application, accept the purchase power agreement for filing, and approve the proposed accounting order. So moved.
Thank you. You've heard Commissioner Whitfield's motion. Are there questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Commissioner Belzer.
I just want to clarify in the motion part where you were saying, I move the approval of the accounting order. That's with the language offered by ORS of that no party is precluded from addressing the reasonableness of any of the cost or return or carrying cost in the next general rate proceeding.
Yes, Commissioner Belzer, that's with that language from ORS.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Not all in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, no. The motion carries. Thank you.
Item number 18, docket number 2019-215E, a contract for electric service between Dominion Energy South Carolina and Evonik Corporation has been filed along with a request for confidential treatment.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Howard.
Chairman, thank you. Chairman, this matter concerns the contract for electric service between Dominion Energy South Carolina Incorporated and Evonik Corporation, along with the confidential treatment of the contract. Specifically, Evonik is building a precipitated silica plant at the Charleston International Manufacturing Center in Goose Creek, South Carolina, that is to supply the tire industry. Dominion maintains that the Evonik operations represents an investment of $120 million and 50 jobs in Berkeley County. Additionally, the parties request the Commission find that the contract contains protective information and issue a protective order barring the disclosure of this contract under the Freedom of Information Act due to the commercial sensitivity and proprietary nature of certain provisions of this contract and the highly competitive nature of the industry in which Evonik operates. The Office of Regulatory Staff recommends approval. Chairman, I move we approve the contract nunc-pro-tunc and grant confidential treatment. So move, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. You've heard Commissioner Howard's motion. The questions or comments? If not all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Item number 19, docket number 2019-100C, the application of city communications.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Belzer.
I move that the Commission approve City Communications Incorporated's application for a certificate of public convenience and necessity to provide resold and facilities-based local exchange access, and inter-exchange telecommunications services in the state of South Carolina and for alternative and flexible regulation. I so move.
Thank you. You've heard Commissioner Belzer's motion. Are there questions or comments? Not all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Item number 20, docket number 1997-239C. The Office of Regulatory Staff is requesting approval to combine the USF and Lifeline administrative expenses into one general USF administrative expense account.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Whitfield.
Mr. Chairman, in order number 2006-609, the Commission approved the recommendations of ORS related to the inclusion of administrative expenses in the State Universal Service Fund. Further, in order number 2005-296, the Commission authorized ORS to utilize universal service monies to increase the awareness and qualify households for participation in the state's Lifeline program. The Universal Service Fund and Lifeline Administration funds were initially established at $106,198 and $213,543 respectively. These amounts are unchanged today. There has been an increase in the workload related to the administration of the USF and a decrease in spending associated with the Lifeline program. To accommodate this change, ORS has requested that the Commission combine the Universal Service Fund and Lifeline administrative expenses into one general USF administrative expense account. This account would be funded in the amount of $319,741, which is the sum of the amounts of the previous accounts. No additional funding is being requested at this time. Mr. Chairman, I move that we find that this is a reasonable and practical request involving no additional funds. Therefore, I move that we grant the request of ORS to combine the USF and Lifeline administrative expenses into one single account. However, we request that ORS continue to account for the amounts in the USF and Lifeline funds individually. So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. You've heard Commissioner Whitfield's motion. Are there questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir, Commissioner Irvin.
does anyone know whether these funds are kept in an interest-bearing account? Is that known? If it's,
I do not.
yeah, if it's otherwise permissible, I
I
would.
think ORS manages that.
Right. I would
Commissioner Belser.
recommend that that we add that to the motion, that the funds be kept in an interest-bearing account.
If I may, Commissioner?
Yes, Commissioner Belser.
I don't know if it's an interest-bearing account. I do recall that there are guidelines and laws and regulations which, especially from the State Treasurer's Office and the Comptroller General's Office on the accounts for different agencies, and they are maintained in compliance with those. I don't know that ORS could just say, we need to put this in an interest-bearing account. They have to follow those guidelines for handling monies, even though they're coming in from another source.
And that's the way I remember it, Commissioner Belser, and I know from your previous days, your previous career, you would know that as well.
I think if it was allowed, that the Treasurer's Office would allow it, but I just don't know that it's even allowed. I do know that they do have to maintain those in accordance with the regulations that are propounded for handling of state funds.
Very well. Just as a matter of interest, could you check on that? I won't make any amendment this time, but if we can just get a response from ORS, I'd just like to know, as a matter of information, whether it is or is not allowed to be in an interest-bearing account.
Okay, we will do that. And so you want to not make a...
Not at this time.
Okay.
Yeah. If it's prohibited, obviously, we're not going to
Right.
Do that. But if it's otherwise allowed, then I hope that they're doing it.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Not all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The motion carries.
Item number 21, docket number 2019-139C. In the complaint of Dunnigan Concrete Construction versus Windstream Communications, the parties report they have reached a settlement agreement.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Mr. Chairman, I would move we grant the request to close this matter as the parties are in agreement and instruct staff to close the docket. So move, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. You've heard Commissioner Hamilton's motion. Are there questions or comments? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Item number 22, docket number 2017-292WS. The Office of Regulatory Staff is requesting to discontinue filing of monthly reports pursuant to Commission Order number 2018-677 regarding the correction of the sewer problem in the 40 Love Point subdivision.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure that members of the commission remember the issue regarding 40 Love Point, where we heard testimony that some of the residents had substantial sewage flowing up through their basements. It's my understanding that monthly filing was conducted to report on the correction of that problem. We received a letter from ORS requesting that the monthly reporting requirement come to an end. Mr. Chairman, fellow commissioners, I'm concerned that we have not heard from Ms. Valtorta, the attorney for 40 Love Point, or a resident regarding the condition of the sewage problem, if there is one. And I think it's important that we give them an opportunity to state whether or not the problem has been appropriately addressed. As such, Mr. Chairman and fellow commissioners, I request that Ms. Valtorta, the attorney for 40 Love Point subdivision in this docket, or any interested party provide comment by July 8th regarding the status of the correction of the sewer problems in the 40 Love Point subdivision. So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. You've heard Commissioner Williams' motion. Are there questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Belser.
I was involved with that case as an attorney when it was presented to the commission. Therefore, I have recused myself from this docket and would ask that the record reflect that I am recused and not voting.
The record will reflect that you are recused and not voting on this matter. Any other questions or comments? Not all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Item number 23, docket numbers 2019-232A and 2019-233A. These documents concern the establishment of a timeline for public comments.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Urban.
in the decision regarding Duke Energy Progress's application for a rate increase, which is order number 2019-341, required the establishment of administrative dockets on both the non-allowable expenses and deferred cost. The dockets identified by Mr. Menges satisfied this instruction. Since these dockets have now been established, we are required to set a procedural time frame for the public to file comments. To meet that requirement, I move that we set the deadline for the public to file comments for Friday, September the 6th, 2019. So moved.
Thank you. You've heard Commissioner Urban's motion. Are there questions or comments? Not all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you.
We'll hold item number 24 until after the transportation agenda. That concerns a presentation regarding House Bill 3659. Turning to our transportation agenda, item number 1, docket number 2019-231T, have the application of C.J. Watson Transportation, LLC.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Belser.
I move that the commission approve the application of C.J. Watson, LLC for a Class C non-emergency certificate. So move.
Thank you. You've heard Commissioner Belser's motion. Are there questions or comments? Not all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Item number 2, docket number 2019-105T, we have a request to amend.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Howard.
thank you. I move we grant the request of Cougar Moving Company, LLC, to amend the tariff, to amend the scope of authority to operate statewide, and to waiver the hearing. ORS does not object to Cougar Moving's request. So move, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. You've heard Commissioner Howard's motion. Are there questions or comments? Not all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we'll revisit item number 24 on the utilities agenda. That's non-docketed item 2019-11E. And again, this concerns a presentation regarding House Bill 3659.
Thank you. We have, we've been taking this up for a few weeks now, and I think we're gonna get toward the end of it and then try to wrap a few things up so we can move ahead. So, Ms. Boyd and Mr. Scarborough.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. We are planning to finish the slide deck that we created a couple of weeks ago, and then there are some issues I want to briefly inform the Commission of as a result of our advisory committee meeting on June 14th.
So we have a handout for you for the most recent version of this presentation. And when you receive that, if you'll flip over to page 25.
We're good, I think. Well, she's gonna be.
As I said, we're on slide 25. If you'll remember, last time we were talking about IRPs. And so today, we're going to talk about section 583760, paragraph A. This part of the law authorizes the Public Service Commission and ORS to bring in an independent third party to create a study that evaluates the integration of renewable energy and emerging energy technologies into the state's grid. It also says that the results of that, that you are to allow interveners in that process. That's the second bullet. And the study shall be presented to the General Assembly. And finally, you are also authorized to require regular updates from the various utilities regarding the implementation of these renewable energy policies. Questions or comments on any of that?
Mr. Chairman, I think we'll put this on our timeline that we are creating. We'll show you that timeline this afternoon too, that we've started. We'll put that on the timeline, and then you'll tell us when you want us to start receiving public comments, opening a docket, so on and so forth.
Okay, so this is not one.
No, sir, we don't. We just wanted to inform you about this requirement. Yes, sir.
Okay, making sure I was on the same.
Yes, sir, you are.
Same page.
Albert,
Yes.
you said something like emerging technology into the state electric grid.
Yes.
Are there any differences between the grid from state to state, or are most of them pretty well historically universal?
That's a very good question. I don't know the answer to that. Do you?
Commissioner Howard, I don't know the answer. If you'd like for us to find the answer or do some research. Well, we hadn't studied that, so, but I think we're capable of doing that if you want us to look into that.
Yes.
One quick question, Mr. Scarborough, that last bullet
Yes.
about updates from all the utilities.
Yes.
I assume we'd get regular, or could ask for regular updates from ORS, like to have ORS come in and possibly give a generic update of all.
That might be a very efficient way to do that. A very efficient way.
So,
And I would also imagine that many of these utilities, as part of their IRPs, would report some of that information as well.
right.
Mhm. But you're right, that may be a very efficient way to accomplish that task. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Pardon?
Got your
Yes, sir.
microphone
Yeah, that-
on, Commissioner Howard. You're not
Yes, sir.
picked up.
I think those would be covered in IRPs, and so you would be able to see it there, but as Commissioner Whitfield said, you know, maybe ORS would be able to provide a kind of a more generic overview for all of the utilities. Yes, I think it would be included in in their IRPs. Other questions? The next 5 slides deal with interconnection agreements. And in this one, if you notice, section 5827-460, what we're talking about here is the commission's responsibility. Notice it says shall promulgate and periodically review standards, these interconnection standards. So that's part of the task that the Public Service Commission now has, to review these interconnection standards. And then in Part B, there's a timeline. And we've incorporated this into the timeline that we've created. 6 months of the effective date of the amendments of this section, which is November 16, 2019, the Public Service Commission will establish proceedings to consider revisions to the standards that are established here in this section. The Public Service Commission has issued 2 orders, one in 2006 and one in 2016, that relate to these interconnection agreements and interconnection standards. And so staff is currently putting together a summary of what the existing standards are. We'll be glad to brief you on those. We're also working on looking at all of the other states and their interconnection standards, how they set things up. And then we're going to kind of combine all of that into a list of questions that you might want to address as you consider revisions to these standards. Because there are some practices in other states that appear to be maybe best practices that we could learn from as a state and maybe be able to improve some of these interconnection agreements. So we'll be glad to either provide you that information in a hearing like this or in briefings, whatever your preference is. Questions?
Well, yeah, if this was another one, Mr. Chairman, we will include on the to-do list
Right.
for, because we just have to
And you're
establish.
going to put this on that timeline you're going to show us. That's
Yes, sir.
Did you consider contacting the legal department at NARUC to see if they have already gathered some of this information?
I have not, Judge Irvin, after our last meeting, I contacted the North Carolina Commission. I spoke to their general counsel, and he helped me find certain dockets and how to search their dockets, and I have a list of that information, but I haven't gone beyond North Carolina.
Might not be a bad idea just to contact NARUC. They're an excellent resource when it comes to looking. You know, they probably already have a compilation of what other states are doing, possibly.
You're right, and that's what I'm going through.
Right.
And I've also, they also have some standards. They have
Correct.
kind of a model agreement.
Model agreement, best practices.
we've got-
That's a good starting point, I think, because it might save you some time.
It is, and we've got copies
Good.
of those
Great.
model agreements, and there are I found other resources too.
Great.
So your point is well taken. That's a good idea, and that's what we're working on, so thank you. Others? Okay. Section 5827 460A3 goes on and says that this slide basically summarizes the standards that the law requires in those, I guess the standards when you establish those requirements. And so you'll see here, efficient and timely processing of interconnection requests. This is pretty much standard, just routine standards. shall address the impact of additional energy storage. This is talking about battery storage technology. As that evolves, we all know that's changing very rapidly. And so the law says that these standards shall address those, the changes in energy storage technology, particularly battery storage. And then, of course, requires the commission to establish things that you would already do anyway, standards that are fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory. Questions or comments on any of those? As I said, we'll be providing you more information in the near future about some of the standards in other states.
Great, thank you.
The next slide is pretty straightforward. It simply says that if a customer, an interconnection customer, has a dispute with the utility, either party can bring that dispute before this commission. And if they do, this commission has 6 months from the date of the filing of that petition to render a decision. Okay, and then finally,
Mr.
I'm going to turn this over to Ms.
You
Boyd.
remember me saying, rush, 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 hurry, hurry, hurry. There's this deadline we need to meet. 460D,
recall
somewhat,
that.
just a little bit.
Ms. Boyd.
Okay, well, I appreciate the fact that Commissioner Belser recommended that we have the advisory committee meeting. That was our first discussions with any interested persons regarding external stakeholders regarding Act 62. So what happened is the commission, after my hurry, 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 rush, rush, rush recommendation, my reading of 5827 460D was that there was a deadline for the commission to establish for the commission to make a decision regarding interconnection timelines, and then there's some other language in that section regarding impact studies, final system impact studies. So on June 14th, there were several interested persons who attended the advisory committee meeting, and one of the sections where I learned of a different interpretation or different intent for Act 62 relates to this section. And that is that the language after the first comma in 460D, the language that says including time requirements to deliver a final system impact study, so on and so forth, up to the word prior to 3 months, actually does not relate back to the commission. It relates back to the customers that execute that final system impact study. So the deadline there, or I'm calling it a deadline, the reference to 3 months does not refer to commissioner action. It refers to interconnection customers. And there were some parties who actually filed on June 17th. So we had our advisory committee meeting on June 14th, and then on June 17th, we received a letter on behalf of Duke Energy Progress, Duke Energy Carolinas, Dominion Energy South Carolina, Lockhart Power, the South Carolina Solar Business Alliance, Johnson Development Associates, and ORS. They're the interested parties. Basically stating that that provision does not relate to commission action. It is akin to a grandfathering provision that brings those interconnection customers that have executed a system impact study prior to August 15, 2019 within the ambit of the statute. The letter goes on to state, that is, within the guidelines to be established, the commission must include the time requirements by which electrical utilities shall deliver a final system impact study to all interconnection customers that prior to August 15, 2019 have executed a system impact study agreement. I asked Mr. Dong, and he complied with my request until we could get this issue back before you, to issue a standing hearing officer directive that basically held that issue in abeyance. Because not only had I asked you about it, I'd already written a letter. Well, yes, I wrote a letter, actually, with a deadline in it. So now I'm bringing the issue back before you based on the advisory committee meeting participants and this letter to ask that you, I wouldn't say reconsider, find that there's not a deadline for the commission to rule and/or for the parties to file reasonable interconnection timelines with the commission. There is no deadline here for, in this particular section, for any filing before the commission or any action by the commission at this time.
We need to just withdraw that deadline?
Yes, sir.
That's basically
Please.
what it is. Do we need a motion to do that? And
I would, Mr. Chairman, because the directive that, I know this issue was voted on. Give me 1 second, Mr. Chairman, I've got that. Yeah, it was voted on for me to send a second letter to the electric utilities that states that prior to August 16, 2019, they were to file comments with you, and also that I was supposed to issue a notice of filing and hearing and pre-file deadlines. I had not issued that yet, even though we had a draft circulating.
What's that directive number, please, ma'am?
I don't have a directive number, Judge Irvin.
What was the date?
The date of it was June 12th. June
Believe I-
12th.
Did I make that motion? I believe I
I
did.
can tell you, Judge Irvin, yes, you did.
I move the directive that we issued on June 12th, 2019 be withdrawn.
Thank you.
thank you. You've heard Commissioner Irvin's motion. Are there questions or comments? One thing I'd like to comment, I know we were in a hurry looking at things and trying to make some quick deadlines, and that's okay. Because we've addressed all these things. We've gotten out in front on a lot of issues that we may not have had we not thought we had these deadlines. So I think we're in a much better place than we would have been. So it's on the table now, and it's in everybody's mind, and we'll be able to address these things. So.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I also
Commissioner
like
Williams.
to make a couple of comments. I would like to thank our chief clerk and her staff, and also the advisory committee that was put together to give commentary on this law. I do appreciate the aggressive nature, if you will, of our staff to ensure that we meet any and all deadlines in the law, and also appreciate the staff being open to hearing commentary from the advisory committee. So that hard work and effort has not gone unnoticed.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner
I
Hamilton.
just wonder if we should notify the parties that we notified of the deadline that we've just withdrawn, that it has been withdrawn.
And yes, part of the motion would be that the parties previously notified will be further notified that it's been withdrawn at this time.
Good. Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. We'll make that part of the motion. Other questions or comments? Okay. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you.
The final summary slide deals with Section 5827-460E. And what this section addresses is that the Public Service Commission must consider whether to bring in, again, an independent party to conduct a review of the interconnection agreements and standards, and whether to require each utility to do these three things that you see listed here. Conduct a study to determine the scope and cost of necessary transmission upgrades to accommodate the renewable energy resources, to evaluate the cost of developing and maintaining hosting capacity maps so that people might know, participants might know where renewable energy is most feasible, or whether an area is already saturated with that. And we'll talk about that in just a second. We've got some more slides that show how South Carolina stacks up in terms of renewable energy across the Southeast. And then finally, file a list of interconnected facilities with the Commission each quarter. Questions or comments?
Well, does the staff have a recommendation as to how we should proceed on this, since it appears to be not a mandatory requirement, but an optional requirement that we could take up at any time? Is there any urgency to go ahead and set it in motion? Or is this something we could hold off on?
Judge Irvin, I don't think there is an urgent need right now. One of the issues I was going to ask the commissioners to consider at the end is for the entire Act 62 to give the public a deadline for issues like this, to recommend any dates that they feel and reasons for you proceeding, dates by which you should proceed, and then they can provide those comments, and then we can look at everybody's comments, and maybe you can determine, okay, we want to handle this issue first, second, third, that way. Okay.
Well, and I would think that the way the statute's drafted, an uninterested party or intervenor might even petition the commission requesting that we use this mechanism. But the only thing about it is I don't think we should mandate it, because requiring a utility to conduct a study and evaluate the cost and so forth and provide a map with a list, that's going to take time and money on their part, and we don't want to unnecessarily run up the cost to the ratepayers for something that's not needed. So, you know, whoever asks for it's going to have to provide some justification as to why it's needed at this time. But otherwise, it's a balancing act of, you know, whether we should force the utilities to go to this cost and take these steps unless it's needed. I would think that's just an observation, but I think I would say that we just thank you for calling it to our attention, but we just accept it as information at this time.
That's good.
Chairman,
Commissioner Hamilton.
along with what Commissioner Irvin is talking about, is a possibility of thought that it might be good for us to have a workshop or an ex parte to bring the companies in where we can discuss these things with them across the table and kind of get a better understanding from them and let them get one from us to find out where we should be and the best way to do it, to do the same thing, not have a great deal of additional expense, but we got a good understanding. It appears that we could work in unity together to see that this is put forth within all the guidelines.
You mean the all of Act 62?
I think we need to cover it all.
Okay.
They under the gun as much as we.
Well, are you talking companies and all the parties that are involved in this, the four utilities, or, you know, because there's a vested interest, I think, out there with the solar companies as well.
That would be good. I mean, I think if we could get together and have a conversation, that usually you can come to a conclusion much better than trying to think we could get all kind of different things that not gonna merge together and work.
Well, maybe
Would we take comments before doing that? Have a certain amount of time to take comments from, as you were saying, Ms. Boyd, from the public and from all parties, and then schedule. So we have as much information.
I don't know the right way to do it,
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman, but if staff would maybe think about this and it might be a bad idea, I don't know.
I would
Sure,
think,
I think
I
that's a good
think
idea.
instead of doing the briefing, because just as to you consider, Commissioner Hamilton, maybe do a workshop, but then we could organize it by the sections of the bill. Sorry, the law, the Act 62. And then, as you said, the commissioners can participate. You can also require comments be filed by X date and still have your workshop. Your written comments are filed, if you want them 15 days before the workshop, you can do that. And so you'll have your written comments, but then the engagement, I think, that you want with the stakeholders, you'll be able to do.
We've done something like these in past years that have been very, I thought, beneficial.
I agree with you.
And that way we have as much information as we can get before we have the stakeholder workshop.
Okay, if you're, just asking, if you all decide today that you want us to schedule one, what I would ask is if you would consider the organization of the workshop by the order of this act, meaning we would list, this is the order in which the commission will hear comments on first, what I call the avoided cost issues, and then whatever is next, so they know the order. And then they can file their comments in that order, and you basically, your order in that proceeding will follow the order of this act. That's just a recommendation.
I think that's a good idea. That way everybody's on the same page and everybody's following the same process. Anybody?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Whitfield.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Irvin, with all due respect, I'm certainly not wanting to put any unnecessary costs or studies on any of our utilities, but obviously the legislature in passing this Section E, these are all vital things that have to be considered, the transmission upgrades that they'll support the development and not impact reliability. And we're charged here at the commission, of course, with protecting reliability. The number two, we've already heard from utilities that some not only are in saturated areas as we go out with DG, with distributed generation, but also some of the areas are so remote that the infrastructure out in those areas was not able to handle it. And I'm talking about below the transmission level. I'm talking about down to the distribution level. And then number three, the FERC does have jurisdiction. There's always been this ongoing turf battle, if you will, of federal versus state. So some of these interconnections are under the jurisdiction of FERC, and this list does need to be known with the commission each quarter. So these are three things. Obviously, I don't know who was advising them, but obviously whoever was helping craft this legislation got three critical things that we have to think of and be aware of here at the commission. So I would just point that out.
Just wondering whether the statute requires the commission to conduct the comprehensive independent review of interconnection, or whether we should have an outside expert do that. Is it clear to you? An independent review, if they just wanted us to do it, it seems like they would say a comprehensive review, but when they threw in the word independent, it seems to me that maybe this might require us to get outside expertise involved.
That's my understanding. Let me see if we can find that real quickly here in the document itself. It says the commission shall, as part of implementing Section A1, consider whether a comprehensive independent review of interconnection should be performed and consider whether to require each utility to do these things. So my reading is it would be an independent party.
Okay.
Would provide this report to this commission.
Why don't we give this some further thought and before we take any determinative steps? Because I'd like, when does the working group get together again? That might be a good place to start.
We have not scheduled another session yet. Judge Irvin, are you thinking about having that group like we did before, or scheduling a generic workshop?
For example, where I sit now, I have no way of knowing. The utilities may have already conducted a study recently and evaluated the costs. We don't know. And it just as a time saving, instead of setting a workshop or an allowable ex parte hearing, maybe the working group can tell you if it's needed, they can speak to it. If it's not, they can tell you that. But I think that would be helpful now that we're dealing with the specific provisions of the Act, just to have their input up front. And maybe they already have it. And if they do, then ask for a copy. And if they refuse to give you one, then we may have to set a hearing, but you know, I'm sure they'll be happy to provide it if it's available. And if not, they can give you a timeline on when it would be available. But just as a first step, it might be helpful to know what their position is on it or what they have. Because I'm sure that it is a part of their long-term planning process. They have to have something in place.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Is that all right with the other members of the commission? Or just to get the working group to look, to hear from them first and see where we are?
I think it's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Will do.
Would you, is it?
Would we do that before we had, so we're talking about doing that before we have this,
Workshop, yeah.
this
I think what I-
stakeholder workshop?
Yeah, if you're okay with me doing this, I would still send an agenda based on what I described. So it would still
Yes.
have the order of this.
Yes.
And we would still want them to ask them to just maybe file brief comments regarding 460E, as Judge Irvin just mentioned, but then also maybe just procedural issues, any in the procedural issue that they've not filed with us already, to please do that before the advisory committee meeting. And then we'd ask Ms. Wheat to please sit and record this for us, so we get a transcript.
Okay. That works for everybody.
If they have hosting capacity maps, tell them to bring copies. You know, if they have a study, a written study, and a cost estimate, ask them to bring the copies. You can go ahead and distribute them, make them part of the transcript. That will at least we'll have the available information, then we can decide what else we need.
Do it. The next two slides are a repeat of the timeline that you saw at the very beginning of this presentation a couple of weeks ago. So we're not going to go back through that again. Just wanted you to see that we've created this timeline based on all of the events that are required in Act 62. So that's the two slides there. We're going to jump over the down the road examples. What I want to show you now is
Okay, I'll get you.
I'm going to get mic'd up because I want to stand up here and show you some things. A few weeks ago, some of the commissioners asked questions about how many small power producers there were across the Southeast. And so that's what you're seeing right here. You can see in this slide that in the 7 states across the Southeast, there are 624 qualifying facilities that operate under PURPA in our region. You can see that South Carolina is, it's just a tiny little part here for South Carolina. North Carolina leads the way, and you can see that the orange, the kind of pinkish colors, those are photovoltaic, that's solar power. You can see that's the majority of what we're looking at. This is, the pink is existing, the green is planned solar coming down the pipeline. And so you can see that South Carolina is that's all we have is photovoltaic right now. And so we're just getting started. You can see from, look at the little arrow there, we're way behind North Carolina, Florida, and Georgia. North Carolina leads the way. And you can see this is what we're measuring here is the number of megawatts in capacity. And so you can see that North Carolina is far and away the biggest producer of photovoltaic in the region. You can see out of the 624 facilities, 483 of those are operating in North Carolina and account for 2.6 gigawatts of that total 4.4 gigawatt capacity. This slide shows the top 10 states with PURPA qualifying facility generating capacity. Again, this is from 2008 to 2017, again measured in gigawatts on this horizontal axis here. And what you're seeing here in the lighter yellow color and then that kind of gold color, that's all solar. The light yellow is the non-qualifying facilities and the gold color is the PURPA qualifying facilities. And again, you can see that virtually everything in North Carolina is solar. Texas is interesting. They're farther along, California as well, but majority of their energy is generated through wind, on land, onshore wind. So you notice South Carolina does not even show up. Those are the top 10 states. This slide shows the renewable energy demand and how much capacity exists in each state, again in the southeast. And again, if you'll notice, North Carolina leading the way. Here's South Carolina. I put a little block around us here. Over here you see this axis is measured in percent. This is megawatt hours. What this shows is the blue dot, the little blue histogram there, shows how much energy demand, an estimate of renewable energy demand there is in the state of South Carolina. And you can see right now there's not a lot compared to the other states. This report also shows how much we are, the kind of orange dot, orange little histogram there, shows how much we're currently providing in renewable energy in the state. And the 7%, that little gold block is 7% of the blue block. So in other words, only 7% of the demand, renewable energy demand in the state is being provided right now. So as you can see, there's a lot of potential to develop here. We're just beginning. We're taking baby steps to get there. So just 7%. And then this shows the off-site renewables in the southeast. And you can again see this is measured in megawatts. And so once again, North Carolina leading the way, 344 megawatts, 298 there in Georgia, 16 in Florida, and we're at 8. So all 8 megawatts in South Carolina are coming from community solar programs. And then finally, talking about community solar programs, what you see here is by year how much community solar capacity exists in each state. South Carolina is the purple section of each histogram. And you notice we had nothing until 2016, and it's a very small amount of community solar capacity installed. But in 2017, the last year for which they have the data published, South Carolina has really grown. I mean, look at the size. You know, we went from that little purple blob to a much bigger purple blob. And so in 2018, it's probably going to get even bigger as well, as more and more community solar programs are installed. So you can see, as I said, we're just getting started in this state. A lot of potential, a lot of capacity to come.
That sort of correlates with Act 236, I guess, is
yes,
where we start seeing the gains.
Yep. And some of the other states, again, North Carolina, they were a little ahead of the game in terms of passing acts like 236 to, and then, of course, this Act 62 to get us there. So that just is a brief update on where we stand as a state.
Mr. Chairman, I'm over here now, briefly. Okay, so remember I told you I wanted to update you on a couple of other issues from the advisory committee meeting. One of the others is the IRPs. Remember we talked about that, and okay. So there have been some comments that have been filed that basically the intent of Act 62 for when electric utilities file their IRPs in compliance with those new sections, the intent is for those filings to begin in 2020, not this year. So I know we're going to return to that issue, revisit that issue. I just wanted to let you know what we were told on June 14th. Okay? May I get the Elmo, Randy, please? So also at that meeting, Dominion Energy's attorney, Chad Burgess, provided or reviewed this matrix that we're distributing to you now regarding dockets that we've opened and their feedback on order deadlines and just the suggested procedural schedules, Mr. Chairman. And so what I was going to ask commission to, it's kind of the dialogue, the exchange I had with Judge Irvin earlier about wrapping up these issues, any further comments that you all might consider regarding any other procedural issues, any other interpretations, not regarding the substance of the bill, but maybe perhaps suggestions as to the order by which the commission, if it's not specifically stated in the statute, recommendations as the order as to which you kind of take up these issues in Act 62, that perhaps they can use this as a guide. They can either mark that up, file it with us, here's entity XYZ's proposed schedule. I would just recommend that you consider asking the public, asking any stakeholders to file by X date any other procedural comments or recommendations regarding the order in which you take up issues by a certain date certain.
So, and this is in addition to, we just had a motion on comments.
Yes, sir.
Can we
Incorporate it into that.
incorporate all of that together? So we just gotta, I don't know how that works on how much volume of stuff we get at one time, or,
And it's possible that I'm repeating myself. I had not provided you with that matrix before now. And what I can do as part of our notice to the public for the advisory meeting is include this as an attachment too, and ask them if they have any, if they differ or want to provide a
yeah,
different
I
schedule.
think that would be good, and have these dates that we've asked for comments sort of consolidated, so we've got to not having them coming in at so many different times.
Yes, sir.
That's just me. I don't know.
Mr. Chairman,
Belson.
when are you talking about having the advisory committee or sending something out? What are you talking about on a date for them? Because it seems that this matrix ought to be addressed in the comments that might be due, that would be due on next Friday.
July 5th?
Yes.
I think we could schedule an advisory meeting as early as the 12th.
I'm just saying, I don't think that the advisory committee meeting is going to happen in time to have comments on the dates that we've asked for on the 5th.
Okay.
Was this document, this proposed pre-file testimony deadlines and hearing dates, was that provided to you at the advisory committee meeting?
Yes, sir.
So everybody had a copy then?
Yes, sir. And I did ask if the participants would consider just marking that up and filing it with us. I just think we need a.
Right, need a deadline.
I think we do, so that we can keep moving. So you're right. We have the advisory committee meeting, Mr. Chairman. And then remember, I'm going to use as an outline the different sections of Act 62, right, for them to talk about any other issues. And as Judge Irvin just mentioned, the participants already have a copy of this. So I think it's probably enough time. They've had enough time.
Okay, to add that, let me ask.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, Commissioner Williams.
When, Ms. Boyd, when you say enough time, you're referencing they've had this material, the parties have had this material long enough to be able to provide some level of commentary by the 5th?
I think so.
I want to clarify a couple of things too. At the advisory committee, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I feel as if I'm hearing you say that it was a consensus that the parties believe that the IRP date is 2020.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so
That's right.
all parties involved believe that the IRP date is 2020.
Yes, sir. And I want to say there's a filing. I'll find it before we leave. I think they filed something too, stating that.
Okay. Well, I'll ask my colleagues if our chief clerk believes that the parties have had this material long enough to be able to provide some level of commentary by the 5th, would it not make sense to make that the deadline? I know that, I think that was Commissioner Belzer's motion in our, earlier on. Do you have any comments on that, Commissioner Belzer?
I think that, the motion that was on for the 5th had to do with the, 176 docket and the individual dockets for the utilities related to avoided cost and, avoided cost methodologies, the, form contracts, those dockets. And I think on looking at this matrix, that appears to be column 1, the standard offer, avoided cost, et cetera, what Dominion has noted as docket 2019-184E, which is, I think, the docket specific to Dominion on those. So to the extent that, I don't know that the comments on the 5th need to incorporate all of these, the entire matrix, just the first column with regard to those dockets. Ms. Boyd, does that sound correct? You were looking at something else. I'm sorry. That's okay.
So I was fine. There are
That's
letters
okay.
regarding the IRPs.
We've got you
about
we're-
2020.
We've got you doing something. I'm asking you something. That's okay.
I got caught. I'm
And-
sorry,
and
Commissioner
so I
Bilson.
think the concern about the July 5th date are these schedules that have been proposed by the various parties with regard to the 6-month deadline. And that's what needs to be addressed
That's
by
right.
the 5th.
That is right.
I think that's what needs to be addressed by the 5th. It doesn't have to be every docket that's been opened, but the ones that are dealing with the avoided costs, the contract, the standard offerings, those things where we have that specific deadline.
Right. The deadline for the avoided cost docket, you're right. There's a 6-month deadline. However, I think perhaps we're just talking about procedural issues, right? As it relates to all the other dockets. And that's why I feel as though, and one other thing that was said, one person said during the advisory committee meeting, Jocelyn, you know, there's a certain order that particular entity would like to see these issues in Act 62 addressed because one kind of helps build the other, if that makes sense. And that was one of the reasons started with the avoided cost issue, because they kind of build on each other. So if they already know that, and if that's the thinking for others, then I think July 5th for the avoided cost issue that you addressed earlier today, and any of the others that are in Act 62, I think they'll be prepared to file that. And then we can schedule an advisory meeting on July 12th.
But you're just asking for comments on
That's it.
this. We're not making a decision or anything final, and we see what we get. Yeah, they know that. So we're asking for comments and for that by the 5th, and then we're not making any final decisions based on right then. We're just trying to get everybody's thoughts
Yes, sir.
on procedural matters.
Yes, sir. And if I may say, those who participated did a great job. This is my page with notes, and everybody commented. I asked for them to please consider filing that document either marked up or something similar to this document so that we could have something concrete to view each stakeholder's position on scheduling, due dates, whatever.
I think that's what Commissioner Williams was asking for. Is that right, Commissioner Williams?
That's exactly right, Commissioner Whitfield. And I think it's appropriate to have a motion. Mr. Chairman, I move that we set a July 5th deadline for comments from all parties regarding the community solar issues, voluntary renewable energy program, review of interconnection standards, review of NEM and NEM methodology, and the IRP. Any and all comments from all parties on those issues. I move that we set a July 5th deadline. I want to, and just
That's for procedural.
for procedural matters.
Yes.
Did I get all the information?
May have missed one.
Which one?
You get the avoided cost one?
I thought that was already made by Commissioner Belzer.
I get
But I'll just for clarity, also standard offers, avoided costs, et cetera. All the issues on this this hasn't been admitted. I mean,
No, sir.
so,
But I will file it with the docket today.
okay.
No problem. Yes, sir.
All right, if you would, that would
Yes,
be
sir.
helpful.
Yes, sir.
That's my motion. So moved.
Okay. Heard Commissioner Williams' motion. Questions and comments? Is everybody clear on what's being asked for?
Just one comment, Mr. Chairman. I think Ms. Boyd did say that the other companies could take this sheet and mark it up, as she said. Is that correct, Ms.
Yes,
Boyd?
sir.
Okay.
Yes, Commissioner Whitfield. That's what I mentioned at
That
the
might help
meeting.
speed them along, too.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Not all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman, so the only other thing I would say publicly is I'm gonna schedule that advisory meeting for Friday, July 12th. All right?
Thank you. Okay. Does that conclude?
No, we do. Yes, sir.
Right. Just watching Mr. Melcher's right with a lightsaber, it looked like. So I got distracted for a second. Anything else to come before us today? If not, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Yeah, on the hearing.
Got it, thanks. Thank you for joining us. The Commission hosts business meetings each Wednesday to discuss dockets and issue directives, and each week we provide these post-meeting summaries to give context to the issues discussed. These meetings are usually held at 2 p.m., and all agendas and materials are posted to the docket management system in the days prior to each meeting. If you have questions about Commission business, we encourage you to reach out to us at robert.bachman@psc.sc.gov or via social media by following the SC Utility Consumer Program on Twitter at Utility Consumer and on Facebook at SC Utility Consumer. Today's business meeting started at 2:01 p.m. and began with the supplemental agenda, which outlined 4 requests made following the enaction of the Energy Freedom Act. Commission discussion followed, with Commissioner Belser noting that a number of public comments have been submitted to the Commission related to the dockets established by Act 62, otherwise known as the Energy Freedom Act. Commissioner Belser made the motion to have all public comment in by the close of business on July 5th in order to consolidate all information and positions. This motion carried. With the supplemental agenda concluded, the Commission moved on to Item 1 on the Utilities agenda. Items 1 through 14 were petitions to intervene, essentially allowing a non-named party to provide testimony or evidence in a case that is of interest to their work but doesn't directly involve them as a plaintiff or defendant. Item 15 was a request for acceptance of filing of the Renewable Power Purchase Agreement between Eastover Solar LLC and Dominion Energy South Carolina. Commissioner Williams made the motion to grant this request. Next, the Commissioners considered Duke Energy Carolina's request for approval of the amended application of Rider 11 Demand Side Management and Energy Efficiency for 2020. Commissioner Williams made the motion to accept the revised programs, and ORS noted that the revised riders are based on reasonable estimates and conform to the Commission's regulations, and recommends the approval of said revisions with a reduction of the recoverable cost. Commissioner Belser agreed with the motion, but noted that low-income customers should have more options, and that DEC should work collaboratively to establish these options and develop a standardized annual protocol for efforts in recovery. Commissioner Irving's motion carried. Item 17 covered Duke Energy Carolina LLC's request for approval of the transfer and sale of hydroelectric generation facilities, the acceptance for filing of a power purchase agreement, and an accounting order to establish a regulatory asset. Commissioner Whitfield outlined the request in detail and brought forward a motion to grant this request. He noted that this project is similar to other proposals brought before the Commission in the past, and also noted that ORS has no objection to the company's application, in which they state that this proposal will benefit ratepayers. Commissioner Belser then clarified that the approval of the accounting order should contain ORS's suggested language, and that motion carried. Item 18 was a request for approval of a contract for electric service between Dominion Energy South Carolina and Evonik Corporation, and an attendant request for confidential treatment. Following a motion made by Commissioner Howard, who noted that the contract contains confidential information and that ORS recommends approval, this motion carried. Next, item 19 covered a request for a certificate of public convenience and associated requests. Following a motion made by Commissioner Belser, this carried. Item 20 covered ORS's request to combine two expense accounts into one general administrative expense account. Commissioner Whitfield pointed out that ORS has experienced a series of significant changes necessitating forecasting and collection updates. A reasonable and practical request requiring no additional funds, in the Commission's words. Commissioner Irving asked if anyone knew whether these accounts carry interest and that the motion be adjusted to reflect the answer from ORS upon request. This motion carried. Item 21 dealt with a request to approve a settlement agreement. Commissioner Hamilton moved to close this matter as all parties are in agreement and to close the docket. This carried. Item 22 covered a request from ORS to discount monthly filing of reports regarding the correction of a sewer problem, with Commissioner Williams bringing up the issues with substantial sewage leakage and that monthly filings had been mandated in the past. Commissioner Williams was concerned that the Commission had not heard from residents or council regarding the sewage problem, and that they should be given the opportunity to do so, and requested any interested parties provide commentary by July 8th. Commissioner Belser noted that she is recused from this docket. The motion carried. Item 23 dealt with a request for an establishment for the timeline of public comments on Order 2019-341. Commissioner Irving proposed that the deadline be set for Friday, September 6, 2019, and that motion did carry. Item 24 was delayed until after the transportation agenda, as it was a presentation from Commission staff. In addition to these items discussed in depth, the Commissioners were also advised on 49 other utilities-related items. You can find the complete list of these items and the corresponding docket numbers on the Utilities Agenda, which is available at the PSC website at dms.psc.sc.gov under the Calendar tab. Moving on to the Transportation Agenda, the Commissioners heard a request for a new certificate, which was granted following a motion made by Commissioner Belser. Next, Commissioners approved a request to amend the tariff and the scope of authority made by a transportation provider, which was granted following a motion made by Commissioner Howard. In addition to the items discussed this meeting, the Commissioners were advised on 4 other transportation-related issues. You can find a complete list of these items on the docket management system at dms.psc.sc.gov. Following the Transportation Agenda, Jocelyn Boyd and Norman Scarborough continued their presentation on the impact Act 62, the Energy Freedom Act, will have on the Public Service Commission and on the utility economy of our state. The complete presentation will be posted to the docket management system, and the presentation given today is archived on the SCETV live stream page at www.scetv.org/PSC. Again, that's www.scetv.org/PSC. Among other issues discussed, the Commission withdrew their earlier proposed deadline of August 16, 2019 for filing comments and pre-filed deadlines, a directive issued on June 19, 2019, and deliberated whether utilities should be required to study the cost of renewable energy upgrades, evaluate the cost of developing and maintaining hosting capacity maps, and file a list of interconnected facilities with the Commission each quarter. On this last question, which is optional and not mandatory under the Act, the Commission elected to hold off on requiring without further discussion and to potentially create a workshop or ex parte briefing to minimize expense and inform companies of the effects of Act 62, especially related to these 3 items. The Commission also set a July 5th deadline for any and all comments on a list of procedural matters, including integrated resource plans, avoided costs, standard offers, and other items. You can find the list of these matters with the docket on the docket management system. And again, that presentation will be archived at www.scetv.org/PSC. The next Commission business meeting will be held at 2 p.m. on July 11th. The meeting will be live streamed on our website at www.psc.sc.gov. Please note that this meeting will be on a Thursday at 2 p.m. For requests and for more information, please follow us on social media, on Twitter at PSC of SC, or on Facebook at the Public Service Commission of South Carolina, or call the offices of the PSC at 803-896-5100. Thank you, and we'll see you on July 11th.